nice to finally see you in person after all this time.
I know. I can't believe we're finally meeting in person, not on Zoom for once.
I'm so excited to do this PD series webinar with you on target language use. And I think it's really exciting that you teach high school, I teach middle school, I've taught elementary school, but we both work with novice learners. So we'll be able to talk about a bunch of strategies for supporting target language use with our novice learners.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to hear what you have to contribute.
I'm excited to hear what you have to contribute. How's your year going so far? Like, what are you finding?
Man, it's been crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting a little bit more into the hang of things, but at the beginning I was definitely struggling to get my kids back into a routine and wanting to speak in the target language.
And being in school again.
In general, communicating, yeah.
So what are some of the first things that you think we should probably like talk about is kind of like, I think it's probably important to talk about how we set the stage for using the target language, both them being able to understand but also produce output. So what do you think some of the first things are that we should probably talk about in this presentation?
I think we should start maybe with talking about some routines, some common things we have in place in our classroom.
Yes. What are your routines like?
So I would say from the beginning of the year I start a pretty strong routine, getting the kids hearing those common structures to have conversations, and then kind of starting to take away the structure so that they can do it on their own with their peers. How about you? What would you say?
So that's like the scaffolding, but then knowing when to take it away.
Exactly.
Yeah. I find it's been really important to have like a really clear structure even for my class time and the routine of my class, like how we start class. Do you usually do a warm-up?
Absolutely. Every day the kids come in, they get a warm-up so they can get started speaking Spanish, and we get going right away.
Mm-hmm. So are your warm-ups usually the kids talking to each other, or they sit and do something on a piece of paper?
I would say it's a mix. Mm-hmm. I do like to get the kids talking though. So a lot of times I'll maybe have them reflect on something quickly on paper, and then they'll do a turn and talk and share with their partners.
I love it, because I know when I first started teaching, I often thought it was important to have them settled into their seats and be quiet to get them into class. But I kind of felt like that killed the time when they were most willing to be talking. So I really try to have like a variety of, I call them active warm-ups, a variety of like get up and move around and talk to other people to kind of activate their target language use right from when they come into the room.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now I know that you're pretty good at using target language from some of your presentations that I've seen. What would you say that you use most frequently to get your students producing in the target language?
So I would say definitely a lot of scaffolding. So we use a lot of highly practiced, memorized language chunks. And I always try to provide them with visual displays of what they can produce as a possible answer so that they have scaffolding to rely on for that. So you think very early in the year, things like, how are you? Providing that question on the board with them, and then providing them with images to show some different ways that they could respond, and then doing that with any kind of content as we're introducing it. I think something else that's been very important to me is really being aware of what their proficiency level is and what's realistic to expect at their proficiency level. And so because I work with novice level learners, I never expect them to be able to produce full sentences, especially at the beginning. I provide them with the scaffolding to give a full sentence if they want to, but I don't hold them to that. I don't, slap their hand if they didn't use a full sentence or pull out the red pen, but provide the scaffolding and celebrate when they use it, but also equally acceptable when they don't.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. I would say starting small and then building on that is really key in the novice level.
Absolutely. So I'm finding we're getting to that time of the year where there's starting to be this kind of lull in engagement and participation, and I'm having to dig deep into my trick box and pull out some tricks to get kids a little more engaged and active. What are some of the things that you do when your students aren't necessarily as engaged and motivated to use the target language?
I've been trying to make things a little bit more exciting in my classroom lately. I've been doing some games.
Ooh,
some new games.
What's your favorite go-to game?
I would say my favorite one right now is Taboo. I do that with my kids to practice vocab and circumlocution skills. And It sounds boring when you say it like that, but the kids really like it. They get to describe one of their vocab words, but they can't use specific words relating to that.
Very, very cool.
So like elephant, for example, if they were describing that, they couldn't say animal and they can't say big. So they have to use their circumlocution skills to talk around it.
And it's interesting that you're talking about circumlocution because you work with novice level learners. And circumlocution is such an essential skill for when we're confronting situations where we don't know the words that we need to use, but it's not often that it's taught in a novice level class. I also love to do information gap activities. So when one student has certain information and another student has other information, and they need to bring the information together to complete the task. I was actually, right before you arrived here, I was printing copies of an infographic that we're using to do an information gap activity where I blacked out parts of it and they have to work together to fill in the infographic.
You've got a lot of good tricks up your sleeve. I'm excited to hear more about them in our presentation.
I am too. It sounds like we have a lot to plan. We're going to talk about some scaffolding and setting up those routines, ways to make input comprehensible to our students. And we'll also be talking about some different activities to get the kids engaged and motivated and wanting to be talking in the target language.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I better get to